Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another TERA dungeon guide with me, Meoni. Today we're going to be looking at Necromancer Tomb. Necromancer Tomb is the 4th dungeon that you will encounter in TERA Online. It's suitable for players of a level range 41 to 45. This dungeon is considerably smaller in comparison to Cultist Refuge, for example, and also a lot easier in difficulty level. There really isn't anything special about the trash mob, so I'm not going to do guides on the rest of the instance. I'm only going to do guides to the bosses. Most of the trash are in groups of 2 and can be easily combated, and ones higher than that can be AoE quite happily, so there's no real need to show you any of that. So let's have a look at the first boss. The first boss is called Trezadius. Quite an amazing name, I call him Treyman. The most important point about this encounter are spikes that you see around on the floor. You won't see them at the moment, but they come out of those like metal strips across the floor. You basically want to stay away from them. The spikes do massive damage and can kill a cloth character in one shot, and avoiding them is the key to success. Don't be alarmed also of the damage output if you're ranged. You don't really want to risk getting hit by the spikes, and also this boss has an aggro reset, so the best tactic you can be at ranged is to find a spot at distance from the centre of the room. When the boss resets aggro, he teleports or moves to the centre of the room, resets aggro, and then fixates it on someone else. If you have aggro, it's better to be further away, then you've got more distance to run to the tank. You want to come back to the tank so he can pull aggro off you and it's all good again. But don't moan at the tank if he does lose aggro, because it is a natural reset built into the fight. Here's the actual ability list of the boss. The normal attack, it does normal damage and is slow, it can be dodged and blocked easy. There's an ability called Axe Strike, which does moderate damage but is very slow and avoidable. An Axe Cleave, which does moderate damage in front of him in a 120 degree angle cone, which is again avoidable if you DPS him from behind. And a forward attack, which does minor damage on a single target, which is more of a lunge, so stay behind boss. Keeping all this in mind and keeping an eye on your feet is key to success in this fight, and you should have no real problems if you've followed what I've told you. So without further ado, let's speed this up, reap the loot, and go and kill the next boss. Once you've killed Trezadius, Dalmanak is the second boss you will encounter. So this guy is your classic tank and spank boss really, with some minor extras. He has a nasty AoE damage and summons occasional 1 adds at a time which need to be killed on a priority system before you DPS a boss. He also randomly disappears through the floor and reappears in another spot, which is quite comical to watch. If you want to give your healer an easy time though, in this encounter you should focus on the adds as soon as they spawn, and switch back to the boss later. So here's a quick rundown of the abilities for you. So his normal attack is dodged and blocked easily, like every other boss. He has the underground escape ability, which I talked about earlier, which is a burrow where he disappears and reappears into a new location. Usually it's on a member spot beside the tank or near to the tank. His Dust Cloud is the heavy AoE damage and should be avoided at all costs. His summon minion, he only ever summons 1 ad at a time, so that's why it's recommended just to get rid of the little ad and then come back onto the boss before you get overwhelmed, because I'm sure it will go after a healer or something and you don't want that. He has a charge which does moderate damage, so you can dodge and or block that and move out of the way if you're a DPS. You don't want to get hit by that. He does a cleave which does moderate damage to everyone 180 degrees in front of him again, so again if you DPS, reality says that you should be DPSing from behind. And then his spit poison, which he fires like a ball of poison at a spot. You just want to move away from this spot. It's marked on the floor. If you don't, you get a horrible poison debuff. And if you're following that and you're making sure your adds are dead and your heal is still okay for mana, you shouldn't have any problems at all on that fight. So let's move on quickly to the kill and the loot, and then move on to the next boss. This leads us on to our next encounter. This is boss 3. This is mutated chidoon. Now, if you followed the storyline, you'll know exactly who chidoon is and exactly what's happened to him, and it's a sad story. But moving on, this is essentially another tank and spank encounter at the very roots. But he does have some nasty attacks that can be blocked and dodged easily, but they're still nasty regardless. Basically, as soon as you avoid his energy lance attack, you should have an easy time to kill him though. Aside from technically being very easy to kill, this guy does look the part, and I'm amazed by the sheer scale of him. It's really awesome anyway, so just quit your complaining about the actual tactics for the boss and enjoy the fight like I did. So his ability rundown, his normal attack does normal damage but is very slow. It can be dodged and blocked very easily. He has an ability called Horror Shout, which does massive damage to anyone who stands inside the red circle. So what do? You don't stand in the red circle. That's it. Energy Lance, which is the attack I was mentioning earlier, which really will kill you. It does massive damage to anyone who stands in a direct line in front of him over 3 seconds. Now, the Lancer, or whatever, the Warrior, the tank, will be basically there. If they're a warrior, they're probably not going to be there, but the Lancer can hold his shield and just stand there. If you are stood there, you are going to get fried. So what do? You don't attack from the front. So yeah, that's pretty much the rule of this fight. That's all you really need to know. He does a charge which does moderate damage but doesn't kill you to anyone who stands in his way in a direct line. So once again, be behind him and he's not going to charge you. He has a defense stance which increases his defense stance momentarily. He has Sword Spike when he strikes the floor in front of him and creates a big black circle. Everyone who stands inside the circle will take moderate damage consistently. So the tank, if this circle goes onto you, you just want to pull him back out of range of that circle so you're not taking the periodic damage from that as well as his hits to make the healer's life a little bit easier. But there really shouldn't be any DPS in front of him at any time during this entire encounter. And he also has Shield Bash, which does moderate damage in an arc angle of 180 degrees. Now you can actually get hit by this. In this footage I do get hit by this, because I didn't really realise how big his hitbox was until I was to the left of him and he bashed me a little. It doesn't really hurt at all, but it's something to avoid, isn't it? So once chidoon has licked the floor to see what it tastes like, it's time to move on to the next and final boss of the instance. So your fourth and final boss here, bedlift. Now this is the final boss of the instance. This boss is quite a mobile, moving all of the room kind of boss. The most important part of this encounter is the ads rather than the boss itself. During the encounter, bedlift summon 3 waves of stationary ads all around the room. These ads are similar to what you encounter at the beginning of Sinestral Manor, that dungeon, and they will cast a static field around them which constantly damages anyone who enters their area. The first wave will be summoned when bedlift is at 70% health, the second will be cast at 50%, and the third at 30%. The first wave will cover the outline perimeter of the room. The second wave will be another perimeter of the room but in smaller radius from the centre, and the third wave will be summoned at the centre of the room. The key here is to keep one corner clear at all time. So by keeping one corner free of ads, at the second wave you will have the space to move out when the third wave will spawn in the middle of the room. If you keep this in mind, you will successfully finish the final encounter without any real damage at all, and your healer will be still smiling. Hopefully. So here comes the first wave of wraiths here now. However, if your team is skilled enough, you don't actually have to DPS the ads at all. Since there are only 3 waves, they are in controlled positions, there are spaces in between. In this encounter, we don't actually do hardly any damage to the ads at all. We just let them pile on and avoid them using the gaps in between. It's perfectly doable like this. Obviously, most groups will probably not be able to do it like this. Essentially not in a pug environment. It's always best to clear a corner and use that tactic. But for this, we pretty much raged it and won terribly. So let's take you through a little rundown of his abilities like I did with the other bosses. His normal attack is normal, damaging and slow, easily blocked and dodged like every other mob and boss in the game. He has summon minions which again are at 70%, 50% and 30% health of the boss. which will obviously cover the entire room out to inwards. You can clear your corner, or you can do it like we did, but like we kind of really needed communication to pull that off, so don't really go around expecting pugs to do that all the time. He has a stomp ability which hits the ground with his fist, and if you stand there, yeah, he will try to put you inside the ground instead of just punching the floor, so don't be there. Again, don't be in front of the boss because of foul breath. It does a 120 degree in front of him cone of horrible poisonous gas. Again, you just don't want to be in front of any of these bosses really. And to further add to that point, he has a cleave which does a massive attack, which does a massive damage chain attack of 90 degrees and then 180 degrees in front of him. And if you followed all of those tactics, you will have one dead boss and one cleared instance with very little casualties and a very happy healer. Well, probably never a happy healer. Cheer up guys, cheer up, it's only healing. And if you have enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and obviously subscribe to our channel. We have some brilliant TERA guides as well as many other games that we're doing footage of, news, reviews, gameplay, guides, you name it, we've got it. So be sure to subscribe to AceGamesTV today, and if you want to, you can leave a comment below telling me what you would like to see from TERA Online that you haven't seen anywhere else, and I will provide. And if that's all from me, Meoni, and everyone at AceGamesTV, and I wish you a happy day, and I hope this guide has been some use. I will see you next time. Goodbye.